It was a brisk Monday morning at Jefferson High School, and the campus buzzed with excitement for Veterans Day. The sound of sneakers scuffing across the damp pavement mixed with bursts of teenage laughter. Rows of plastic chairs lined the courtyard in front of the old stage. On it, aging veterans, most with silver hair and worn uniforms, sat solemnly, honored guests of the school's annual tribute. The American flag flapped steadily in the early November wind, while a crackling loudspeaker played a solemn military hymn, distorted but dignified. Toward the back of the crowd, away from the cheers and chatter, stood a quiet 10th-grade girl named Lily. She didn't smile, didn't talk. She simply clutched the straps of her backpack and stared down at her shoes. Gray sneakers, torn at the toes, rubber edges worn thin. A group of girls walked past and whispered just loud enough to be heard before bursting into laughter. Look at her shoes, so ghetto. Probably secondhand from Salvation Army. Lily didn't say a word. She just lowered her head. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that those shoes once belonged to her father, Sergeant Mark Dalton. He had worn them on patrol in Kandahar, Afghanistan. He never came home. After he died, her mother kept only a few things. The shoes were one of them. And today, Lily wore them, not to make a statement, not for pity, but to remember, to honor the man who'd given everything. In a crowd that celebrated heroes, she stood alone, quietly carrying the weight of one. Lily didn't move. She didn't argue. She didn't run. She just clenched her fists and tried to hold herself together. Her fingers curled tightly into her sleeves as the whispers behind her turned into laughter again. Shrill, sharp, cutting to the reverence of the ceremony. The four girls, emboldened by their own cruelty, nudged each other and smirked, unaware of the silence beginning to spread behind them. From the first row of veteran seating, one man had stood. Slowly, deliberately, he made his way toward the back of the courtyard. His uniform jacket, warm but crisp, held ribbons that spoke of battles long past. His boots thudded softly against the concrete, each step intentional. It was William Harris, a retired Marine who had served 2 tours in Vietnam. He was in his late 70s now, tall but slightly stooped, his face marked by sun and time. He had been watching, not just the ceremony, but everything. The glances, the laughter, the girl with the worn-out shoes, standing all alone. He stopped in front of Lily. His gaze fell to her sneakers. His expression froze. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, without a word, he slowly lowered himself onto one knee. The courtyard went still. Every student, every teacher, every veteran turned to look. "Young lady," Harris said, his voice gravelly, the kind that commanded troops and endured desert winds, "I recognize those shoes." Lily looked up, startled. Her eyes were glassy, red. She said nothing, just blinked in confusion. Harris placed one hand over his heart. "Those are M81 tactical shoes. Special issue. Only assigned to desert recon units back in the day." He paused, then met her eyes. "I saw Sergeant Dalton wearing those exact shoes. Kandahar, 2011. The crowd didn't breathe. Lily's lips parted. "You knew my dad?" "He didn't just serve with me," Harris said quietly. "He saved my life. Pulled me out when a roadside IED hit our convoy. Carried me a mile under fire. You could hear the wind shift. Leaves skipped across the pavement. Somewhere, a flag rope clinked against a pole. These shoes aren't old," Harris continued, turned to look at the students now standing awkwardly behind Lily. "They're scarred, weathered, but not worn out. These shoes have seen more courage than most people ever will." The girls who had laughed fell silent. One of them turned away. Another wiped her eye. Harris stood back up, slowly with effort, but with dignity. He saluted Lily, a full, proper salute. Then he turned to the crowd. "This young woman walks in the footsteps of a hero. And today, you've all seen what honor really looks like. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But the stillness that followed was louder than any applause." The principal walked forward and offered Lily his hand. She didn't take it right away. She was still staring at the man who had knelt before her, at the place where her father's story had quietly come alive again. From that day forward, nobody mentioned Lily's shoes again. but they remembered them. The next year, the school established a scholarship in Sergeant Mark Dalton's name, not just for military families, but for any student who showed courage in the face of ridicule. Lily would go on to speak at local events. She didn't talk much about herself. She talked about her father, about sacrifice, about how some things, like a pair of torn shoes, can carry more meaning than anyone might guess. And every Veterans Day after that, William Harris saved her a seat in the front row. He never missed a ceremony again. The courtyard had fallen completely silent. The laughter was gone. The whispers had died. The 4 girls who had mocked Lily earlier now stood motionless. One looked down at her feet, ashamed. Another brushed away a tear as it welled up in her eye. The weight of the moment had settled over them all. Mr. Harris straightened his back, though his age made the movement slow and deliberate. He turned toward the school administrators and, in a firm but respectful voice, made a simple request, one that had never been made in the history of Jefferson High. A moment of silence, not just for Sergeant Mark Dalton, but for every soldier who had laid down their life for the flag flying above them. Without hesitation, the principal nodded. The microphone let out a faint static before the announcement echoed across the courtyard. Let us all observe 1 minute of silence in honor of the fallen. Every student rose. Teachers put their hands over their hearts. Veterans removed their hats. And in that single minute, 60 seconds of stillness, Lily's world shifted. She was invited to the stage. Her steps were unsure, but her eyes were steady. She said nothing. Instead, she placed her hand over her chest and turned to flag. The breeze lifted it gently, like it knew this moment belonged to something greater than words. From that day forward, no one laughed at Lily's shoes again. The frayed laces, the worn soles, they were no longer signs of poverty or neglect. They became a symbol, a quiet testament to bravery, legacy, and love passed from father to daughter. The story didn't end there. News of what happened that day spread across the community. Local newspapers ran the headline. Veteran honors fallen brother through a daughter's shoes. Letters poured in from veterans all over the country. Some wrote from VA hospitals, some from retirement homes. Many included stories of their own children or comrades they had lost. They didn't thank Lily for her shoes. They thanked her for remembering. Moved by the response, Jefferson High established a scholarship fund in Sergeant Dalton's name. It was called the Dalton Courage Award, and it wasn't limited to military families. It was awarded to any student who showed quiet courage, students who stood alone when it mattered, who carried the memory of others with grace. Lily never asked for recognition. She never gave speeches about what happened. But each year after that, on Veterans Day, she sat in the front row next to Mr. Harris. And every year, he saved her that seat. He said it reminded him that service didn't always come in the form of uniforms or medals. Sometimes it came in silence, in dignity, in the way a child remembers her father and chooses to walk in his shoes, even when the world doesn't understand. Long after Lily graduated, the story continued to be told at Jefferson High. Teachers shared it with new students. Veterans who had never visited the school came just to see the girl who wore her father's boots. And in the quiet corner of the main hallway, beneath a framed photo of Sergeant Dalton, stood the very shoes Lily once wore, encased in glass, worn and torn but never forgotten, because real courage leaves a mark, even in something as simple as an old pair of shoes. If you've ever known someone who gave their life for this country, if you ever witnessed a moment so quiet yet so powerful it stayed with you long after, then please share below, because every memory told is a piece of history preserved. Every story shared is a tribute that deserves to be remembered. And if what you heard today touched your heart, I invite you to subscribe to the channel Old Soldier, not just to follow another video, but to stand with us in honoring the men and women who served, who sacrificed, and who shaped the values we hold dear. Here, we tell stories not to entertain, but to remember. We speak softly so that courage can be heard. We listen so that the legacy of service never fades. Subscribe, leave a comment, and share this story if you believe, like we do, that some things should never be forgotten. We thank you, and so do the quiet soldiers whose footsteps echo in every word we speak.